All right, everybody. Good to see you again. We're doing First Samuel. Uh, First Samuel 11 today. It's good to see you guys. I'm gonna just charge in. I'm kind of tired tonight. Saul rescues the city of Jabesh. Nahash the Ammonite went up and besieged Jabesh Gilead, and all the men of Jabesh said to him, "Make a treaty with us, and we will be subject to you." But Nahash the Ammonite replied, "I will make a treaty with you only on the condition that I gouge out the right eye of every one of you, and so bring disgrace on Israel." So that seems like a common practice in like dominion and in these ancient wars and like disputes between nations. Like in Judges, we read about kings cutting off other rulers like big toe and thumbs, and then of course here it's like gouge out your eye. It's like any way of just kind of dehumanizing you, taking you down a notch, so it's clear that you are subject, you're submissive. I'm glad that we live in the times that we do, right? Ooh. Yeah, the worst that we have to deal with here in Portland, and I often complain about Portland, but it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Okay. The elders of Jabesh Gilead said, "Give us 7 days so we can need our messengers. We can send messengers throughout Israel. If no one comes to rescue us, we will surrender to you." Whew. Rough. When the messengers came to Gibeah of Saul and reported these terms to the people, they all wept aloud. Just then Saul was... let me see. I want you guys to see my eyes if it's possible. I hope that makes it better. Just then Saul was returning from the fields behind the oxen, and he asked, "What is wrong with everyone? Why are they weeping?" When they repeated to him what the men of Jabesh had said, when Saul heard these words, the Spirit of God came powerfully upon him, and he burned with anger. So this is like the most assertive, I want to say, Saul ever gets, but I could be wrong. He took a pair of oxen, cut them into pieces, and sent the pieces by messengers throughout Israel, proclaiming. Wow. So is that like a common practice? Because that happened at the end of Judges with that concubine, which is like one of my least favorite stories ever. Just cutting things up and sending them to the four corners of Israel. "This is what will be done to the oxen of anyone who does not follow Saul and Samuel." Then the terror of the Lord fell on the people, and they came out together as one. When Saul mustered them at Bezek, the men of Israel numbered 300,000, and those of Judah 30,000. They took the messengers who had come. "Say to the men of Jabesh Gilead, by the time the sun is hot tomorrow, you will be rescued." Ooh, what a cool way to say that. By the time the sun is hot tomorrow, you will be rescued. When the messengers went and reported this to the men of Jabesh, they were elated. I picture like Bruce Willis with a freaking cigarette. By the time the sun is hot tomorrow, you guys will be rescued. And then, Anyway, they said to Ammonites, "Tomorrow will..." When the messengers went and reported this to the men of Jabesh, they were elated. They said to the Ammonites, "Tomorrow we will surrender to you, and you can do to us whatever you like." Putting up a little ruse, a little deception. The next day, Saul separated his men into 3 divisions, during the last of which that night they broke into the camp of the Ammonites and slaughtered them until the heat of the day. True to his word. Ouch. Those who survived were scattered so that no two of them were left together. Now Saul is confirmed as king. So he's doing pretty well right now. The people then said to Samuel, "Who was it that asked, 'Shall Saul reign over us?' Turn these men over to us that we may put them to death." But Saul said, "No one will be put to death today, for this is the day the Lord rescued Israel." Gosh, I mean, he sounds pretty solid so far. Then Samuel said to the people, "Come, let us go to Gilgal, and there renew the kingship." So all the people went to Gilgal and made Saul king in the presence of the Lord. They sacrificed for fellowship offerings before the Lord, and Saul and the Israelites held a great celebration. Samuel's farewell speech. This is chapter 12. Alright, so Saul's been confirmed as king, and he's had his first pretty awesome victory, and now old man Samuel is stepping away. Samuel said to all of Israel, "I've listened to everything you have said to me, and have set a king over you. Now you have a king as your leader. As for me, I am old and gray, and my sons are here with you. I've been your leader from my youth until this day." His life really goes fast according to the scriptures, right? The account is just shorter than other great men. "Here I stand, testify against me in the presence of the Lord and his anointed. Whose ox have I taken? Whose donkey have I taken? Whom have I cheated? Whom have I oppressed?" So he's speaking from a lot of pain still about how this kingship was something that they wanted. "From whose hand have I accepted a bribe to make me shut my eyes? If I have done any of these things, I will make it right." And they replied, "You have not cheated us or oppressed us." They replied, "You have not taken anything from anyone's hand." Samuel said to them, "The Lord is witness against you, and also his anointed is a witness to this day that you have not found anything in my hand." And you kind of feel like a sense of foreboding at this point. It's like old man Samuel has been a straight shooter, and he wants to just hear straight from their own mouth that he didn't cheat them. He treated them well. And we could either think that maybe he's just being a bitter old man here, or maybe perhaps the old man knows something and wants to hear it straight from them, that he treated them well. And that's kind of, I mean, if we know the scriptures, we know that the future is not about to be good for them and this first king. Kind of tragic, right? So much potential we see in the scriptures, and then it kind of, things just fall short all the time. He is witness, they said. And then Samuel said to the people, "It is the Lord who appointed Moses and Aaron and brought your ancestors up out of Egypt. Now then stand here, because I am going to confront you with evidence before the Lord as all the righteous acts performed by the Lord for you and your ancestors. After Jacob entered Egypt, they cried to the Lord for help, and the Lord sent Moses and Aaron, who brought your ancestors out of Egypt and settled them in this place." Taking care of my tea here. Just give me a second. You can see my birds in the back room. Let me see what I have to do. There it is. Owl's the blue one there. And freaking Bebo. Bebo is in the corner of that mirror. They're kind of hard to see, but he's right there underneath the reflection of that clock. They're awesome birds, I'm telling you. After Jacob entered Egypt, They cried to the Lord for help, and the Lord sent Moses and Aaron, who brought your ancestors out of Egypt and settled them in this place. He's reminding them of all of this great stuff God has done. But they forgot the Lord their God, so he sold them into the hands of Sisera, the commander of the army of Hazor, and into the hands of the Philistines and the king of Moab, who fought against them. We know what happened to Sisera, right? That was like the Assassin's Creed girl that we've talked about, right? They cried out to the Lord, we have sinned, and we have forsaken the Lord and served the Baals and the Ashtoreths. But now deliver us from the hands of our enemies, and we will serve you. Then the Lord sent Jerubbaal, which is also Gideon, right? Barak, Japheth, and Samuel, and he delivered you from the hands of your enemies all around you, so that you lived in safety. But when you saw the Nahash king of the Ammonites was moving against you, you said to me, no, we want a king to rule over us. And then they have the comparison game that we play as individuals, except they're doing it as a nation, right? We see other nations with kings, so we want a king as well. No, we want a king to rule over us, even though the Lord your God was your king. Samuel says, and I imagine that was with quite a lot of pain, right? You said, no, we want a king to rule over us, even though the Lord your God was your king. And now, here is the king you have chosen, the one you asked for. See, the Lord has set a king over you. And I think they because soon we're going to see David anointed for king to replace, and God says that he looks on the heart, right? Where we look at outer appearance. So, here Samuel is kind of displaying Saul and saying, this is who you wanted, right? And I think it's probably no accident that God picked the tallest man in the land and the most good looking. And he's like, yeah, you want this, right? You want, good looking, tall, able. You're not really looking on the inside, but this is what you want on the outside, right? It's kind of what we do with celebrities and politicians, probably even. We look on the outside. Very few of us have the time or the diligence or the care to look really and try to take inventory of the inside. And even if we do try to do that, none of us can see people's character like God can, right? All right. Now we want a king to rule over us, even though the Lord your God is king. Now here is the king you have chosen, the good-looking one, right? The tall one, and the one you ask for. See, the Lord your God, the Lord has set a king over you. If you fear the Lord and serve and obey him and do not rebel against his commands, and if both you and the king who reigns over you follow the Lord your God, good. But if you do not obey the Lord, and if you rebel against his commands, and his hand will be against you as it was against your ancestors. Now then, stand up, stand still, and see the great thing that the Lord is about to do before your eyes. Is it not wheat harvest now? I will call on the Lord to send thunder and rain, and you will realize what an evil thing you did in the eyes of the Lord when you asked for a king. Wow. Then Samuel called on the Lord. That same day the Lord sent thunder and rain, so that all the people stood in awe of the Lord and of Samuel. And the people all said to Samuel, pray to the Lord your God for your servants, so that we will not die, for we have added to all of our other sins the evil of asking for a king. Do not be afraid, Samuel replied. You have done all this evil, yet do not turn away from the Lord, but serve the Lord with all your heart. There's the word heart. It'd be interesting to underline and count all the times the word heart is used in 1 Samuel, because it's definitely said a lot more than Judges or Ruth or even Joshua, I would think. You just see that word, heart, a lot. And it's also interesting that they repented, but they're still getting a king. God's still giving this to them, even if they're sorry, quote unquote, for it. Just serve God with all your heart. Do not turn away after useless idols. They can do you no good, nor can they rescue you, because they are useless. For the sake of his great name, the Lord will reject his people, will not reject his people, because the Lord was pleased to make you his own. As for me, far be it for me that I should sin against the Lord by failing to pray for you, and I will teach you the way that is good and right. So even despite all this, he's praying for him. And it almost sounds like kind of codependent or manipulative to an outsider, I think. But once again, I'm only sharing how I'm reading this, right? Y'all can read this the way you want to read it. But I'm really believing that this book is written by a good God. The ultimate author is a good God. And he's not a manipulative God. I've been on enough hard journeys that were my fault that I'm just ready to trust a greater shepherd in my life. And I'm believing for a favorable interpretation of God in passages like this. So I'm not saying you couldn't read it in a different way. I'm just saying this is the way I'm reading it. I'm believing that the author of this chapter and the chapters we're about to read and the chapters before, this author is a good author. As for me, far be it from me that I wouldn't pray for you, but be sure to fear the Lord and serve him faithfully with all your heart. There it is again. Consider what great things he has done for you. Yet if you persist in doing evil, both you and your king will perish. Saul was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned over Israel 42 years. This is about to get bad for Saul. Saul chose 3,000 men from Israel. 2,000 were with him at Michmash in the hill country of Bethel, and 1,000 were with Jonathan at Gibeah and Benjamin. The rest of the men he sent back to their homes. He's got 3,000 men, and Jonathan attacked the Philistines' outpost at Gibeah, and the Philistines heard about it. Then Saul had the trumpet blown throughout the land and said, "Let the Hebrews hear." So all Israel heard the news, and Saul attacked the Philistine outpost, and now Israel had become obnoxious to the Philistines, and the people were summoned to join Saul at Gilgal. The Philistines assembled to fight Israel with 3,000 chariots, 6,000 charioteers, soldiers as numerous as the sand on the seashore. So this is a big Lord of the Rings battle. They went up and camped at Michmash, east of Bethaven. When the Israelites saw that their situation was critical and that their army was hard pressed, they hid in caves and thickets among the rocks and pits and cisterns. I think about, because I didn't realize in Judges, it says that there came a point where Samson hid in caves, or in one cave in particular. And I wonder if, legend, even at this point, they theorized which cave was Samson's cave, I wonder if, during times like this, they designated Samson's cave at all. That would be so interesting. the Philistines assembled to fight Israel. Israel was hiding in caves and thickets among the rocks, pits and cisterns, and some Hebrews even crossed the Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilead. Saul remained at Gilgal, and all the troops with him were quaking with fear. He waited 7 days, the time set by Samuel, but Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and Saul's men began to scatter. So they're waiting for Samuel, and he hasn't come to Gilgal. So he said, "Bring me the burnt offering and the fellowship offerings," that Solomon alone was supposed to do, right? And Saul offered the burnt offering himself, just as he had finished making the offering. Of course, I hate this so much. Samuel arrived, and Saul went up to greet him. "What have you done?" asked Samuel. Saul replied, "When I saw that the men were scattering, and that you did not come at the set time, that the Philistines were assembling at Michmash, I thought, now the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not sought the Lord's favor. So I felt compelled to offer the burnt offering." Ooh. I know the good little church boy in me and the good little church Bible student should say it's clear that he should have waited for Samuel, but I think I'm conflicted with this story because I see David break rules and somehow it didn't matter. So why can't Saul do it? And I don't have like a great answer for that, other than we have to kind of believe that David was a man after God's heart, and something about Saul's heart just wasn't genuine. And to me, that's much more of like a faith leap than it is for some people. And I might change my mind in this reading, but that's honestly how I feel here, at least at this point. It's more of just a leap of faith than something I can find clearly in the text as to why Saul couldn't break the rules and David kind of could. "Alright, you have done a foolish thing," Samuel said. "You have not kept the command the Lord your God gave you. If you had, he would have established your kingdom over Israel for all time, but now your kingdom will not endure. The Lord has sought out a man after his own," guess what? A man after his own heart, "and appointed him ruler of his people, because you have not kept the Lord's command." And here I see like a very clear parallel between like Eli and his sons, and Samuel is installed as Eli's replacement, because Eli's sons were certainly going to do it, and Eli even raises Samuel, kind of knowing, kind of unknowing, and then there is like this clear, very similar situation, except it's not with the holy man or the prophet or the priest, it's with the king, right? So Saul's about to do for David what Eli did for Samuel, and Saul's about to basically raise, kind of in a way, raise and nurture David in his own house, bless him, give him his own daughters, stuff like that, where it's like, if it were up to us, we would probably keep Samuel way away from Eli, because we wouldn't trust the situation. But God's like, no, I'm going to let Samuel, basically grow up in the man's house that he's going to replace. It's just not obvious to us, but God's like, nope, I can do it. And then God does the same thing with David and Saul. He's like, we would be like, and there was a lot of cat and mouse stuff that happened, of course. a lot of times where Saul was trying to kill David. But God is so audacious in the Bible that he's like, no, a good amount of this, David's just going to be right under Saul's nose. And I'm okay with that. And I'm going to do it. I think this God that we read about in this big book that I have open, he just doesn't think like we do, you know? So thank you for that, Lord. Then Samuel left Gilgal and went up, kind of, I imagine, disappointed or shocked or not even believing Samuel for that prophecy that somebody new would replace him. Somebody was after God's heart. Samuel went up to Gibeah and Benjamin, and Saul counted the men who were with them, and they numbered about 600. Israel without weapons. Saul and his son Jonathan and the men with them were staying in Gibeah in Benjamin, while the Philistines camped at Michmash. Raiding parties went out from the Philistine camp into 3 detachments. One turned towards Ophrah, the vicinity of Shul, another towards Beth Horon, and the third toward the borderland overlooking the valley of Zeboim, facing the wilderness. Not a blacksmith could be found in the whole land of Israel, because the Philistines had said, otherwise the Hebrews will make swords or spears. So all Israel went down to the Philistines to have their plow points, mattocks, axes, sickles sharpened. So they're fighting with farm tools here. The price was 2/3 of a shekel for sharpening a plow, points, and mattocks, and the third of a shekel for sharpening forks, and axes for repointing goads. Wow, what an interesting detail. So on the day the battle, not a soldier with Saul and Jonathan had a sword or a spear in his hand. Only Saul and his son Jonathan had them. Wow. So Israel's going to fight with farm tools. It sounds like freaking zombie land, man. Yes. It's almost midnight, and I'm like, yeah, I haven't had a lot of sleep. All right. Cinnamon tea, man. Really good. Now, this is chapter 14. Now, a detachment of the Philistines had gone out to the pass of Michmash. One day, Jonathan, son of Saul, said to his young armor-bearer, "Come." Jonathan, yeah, this is Jonathan's story. Son of Saul said to his armor-bearer, "Come, let's go over to the Philistine outpost on the other side." But he did not tell his father. Saul was staying on the outskirts of Gibeah under a pomegranate tree in Migron. With him were about 600 men, among whom were Ahijah, who was wearing an ephod. Remember, that's like the priestly breastplate, you could say. Has like 12 sacred stones that represent the tribes of Israel. It's hard to know if Ahijah was like really a Levite or if he was just posing. I don't know. He was a son of Ichabod's father, so I guess he was a Levite. Ahitub, son of Phinehas, the son of Eli, the Lord's priest in Shiloh. No one was aware that Jonathan had left. That's an interesting detail. On each side of the pass that Jonathan intended to cross to reach the Philistine outpost was a cliff. One was called Bozez, and the other Senech. One cliff stood to the north toward Michmash, and the other to south towards Geba. Jonathan said to his young armor-bearer, "Come, let's go over to the outpost of those uncircumcised men. Perhaps the Lord will act in our behalf. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few." So you can see like the stout heart Jonathan has. This is Saul's son. And it just does seem that he is a sharp contrast in most part to his dad, who's just like chilling under a pomegranate tree right now. Saul's default does not seem to be like strong stands, although he's not without at least one, right? "Do all that you have in mind," his armor-bearer said. "Go ahead, and I'm with your heart, heart and soul." Heart and soul. There's the heart thing again. And Jonathan said, "Come on, then we will cross over to them and let them see us. If they say to us, 'Wait there until we come to you,' we will stay where we are and not go up to them. But if they say, 'Come up to us,' we will climb up, because this will be our sign that the Lord has given them into our hands." Wow. I mean, you could ask for a much bolder sign, right? But here we are. So both of them showed themselves to the Philistine outpost. "Look," said the Philistines, "the Hebrews are crawling out of their holes that they were hiding in." And the men of the outpost shouted to Jonathan and his armor-bearer, "Come up to us, and we'll teach you a lesson." So Jonathan said to his armor-bearer, "Climb up after me. The Lord has given them into the hands of Israel." Jonathan climbed up using his hands and feet, with his armor-bearer right behind him, and the Philistines fell before Jonathan, and his armor-bearer followed and killed behind him. And I'm like no history buff, but I know enough that like having the high ground is very important. I don't even know all of the practical implications of that, but the high ground is very important in those like older, especially older forms of warfare. But I think it's always an advantage. And here Jonathan has the low ground, and he and his armor bearer are like still mopping the floor with these Philistines. Pretty astonishing. Jonathan climbed up using his hands in that first attack. Yeah, so his armor bearer is even killing behind him, kind of cleaning up after him. And in that first attack, Jonathan and his armor bearer killed some 20 men in an area of about a half an acre. And Israel routs the Philistines. Like, we don't need that detail about a half an acre, but they share it. Isn't that interesting? Then panic struck the whole army, and those in the camp and field, and those in the outposts of the raiding parties, and the ground shook. It was a panic sent by God. Saul's lookouts at Gibeah and Benjamin saw the army melting away in all directions, and then Saul said that the men who were with him muster the forces and see who has left us. When they did, it was Jonathan and his armor bearer who were not there. Saul said to Ahijah, "Bring the ark of God." At that time it was the Israelites. While Saul was talking to the priest, the tumult in the Philistine camp increased more and more. So Saul said to the priest, "Withdraw your hand." And then Saul and all his men assembled and went to battle, and they found the Philistines in total confusion, striking out at each other with their swords. Those Hebrews who had previously been with the Philistines and had gone up with them to their camp went over to the Israelites who were with Saul and Jonathan. When all of the Israelites who had hidden in the hill country of Ephraim heard that the Philistines were on the run, they joined the battle in hot pursuit. So on that day, the Lord saved Israel, and the battle moved on beyond Beth Aven. Jonathan eats honey. This is going to be a very similar situation. We just see how courageous Jonathan is. Now the Israelites were in distress that day when Saul had bound the people under an oath, saying, "Cursed be anyone who eats food before evening comes, before I have avenged myself on my enemies." So none of the troops tasted food. Okay. There's an oath, right? And we talked about like foolish oaths in the end of Judges. The entire army entered the woods, and there was honey on the ground. When they went into the woods, they saw the honey oozing out, yet no one could put his hand to his mouth because they feared the oath. But Jonathan had not heard that his father had bound the people with this oath, so he reached out at the end of his staff that was in his hand and dipped it in the honeycomb. He raised his hand to his mouth, and his eyes brightened. Then one of the soldiers told him, "Your father bound the army under the strict oath, saying, 'Cursed be anyone who eats food today. That is why the men are faint.'" Jonathan said, "My father has made trouble for the country. See how my eyes brighten when I tasted a little of this honey? How much better would it have been if the men had eaten today some of the plunder they took from their enemies? Would not the slaughter of the Philistines have been even greater?" That day the Israelites had struck down the Philistines from Michmash to Ahijah, Hashalon, and they were exhausted. They pounced on the plunder, taking sheep, cattle, and calves. They butchered them on the ground and ate them, together with the blood. Then someone said to Saul, "Look, the men are sinning against the Lord by eating meat that has blood in it." "You have broken faith," he said. "Roll a large stone over here at once." And then he said, "Go out among the men and tell them, 'Each of you bring me your cattle and sheep, and slaughter them here and eat them. Do not sin against the Lord by eating meat with blood still in it.'" And we haven't read Exodus and the Pentateuch or the Torah, but that was like a no-no, right? So everyone brought his ox at night and slaughtered it there, and Saul built an altar to the Lord. It was the first time he had done this, and Saul let us go down and pursue the Philistines. Saul said, "Let us go down and pursue the Philistines by night and plunder them till dawn, and let us not leave one of them alive." "Do whatever seems best to you," they replied. But the priest said, "Let us inquire of God here." So Saul asked God, "Shall I go down and pursue the Philistines? Will you give them into the hands of Israel?" But God did not answer him that day. Saul therefore said, "Come here." And Saul seems to not have the patience, right? He kind of acts on his own will if God doesn't answer him on timing that seems reasonable to him. Saul therefore said, "Come here, all you who are leaders of the army, and let us find out what sin has been committed today. As surely as the Lord has rescued Israel's lives, even the guilt lies with my son Jonathan. He must die." But not one of them said a word. Saul then said to all Israel, "You stand over here, and I, Jonathan, my son, will stand over here." That sounds astonishingly like Japheth, doesn't it? He's basically dooming his son. And we'll see how this turns out. "Do what seems best to you," they replied. And then Saul prayed to the Lord, the God of Israel, why have you not answered your servant today? If the fault is in me or my son Jonathan, respond with Urim. But if the men of Israel are at fault, respond with Thummim. And Jonathan and Saul were taken by lot. So it's some sort of a dice that is being thrown. As the men were cleared, Saul said, "Cast the lot between me and Jonathan my son." And Jonathan was taken. Then Saul said to Jonathan, "Tell me what you have done." So Jonathan told him, "I tasted a little bit of honey with the end of my staff, and now I must die." Saul said, May God deal with me, be it ever so severely, if you do not die, Jonathan. But the men said to Saul, should Jonathan die, he brought about this great deliverance in Israel. Never, as surely as the Lord lives, not a hair on his head will fall to the ground, for he did this today with God's help, so that the men rescued Jonathan, and he was not put to death. Some loyalty then, and Saul caved to it, obviously. He probably had to if he was smart. Then Saul stopped pursuing the Philistines, and they withdrew their own land. After Saul had assumed rule over Israel, he fought against their enemies in every side: Moab, the Ammonites, Edom, the kings of Zobah, and the Philistines. Wherever he turned, and he inflicted punishment on them, he fought valiantly and defeated the Amalekites, delivering Israel from the hands of those who had plundered them. Saul's family. Saul's sons were Jonathan, Ishvi, and Melchishua. The name of his older daughter was Merib, and the younger was Michal. His wife's name was Ahinoam, daughter of Hamaz, and the name of the commander of Saul's army was Abner, son of Ner, and Ner was Saul's uncle. Saul's father, Kish, and Abner's father, Ner, were sons of Abiel. And all the days of Saul there was a bitter war with the Philistines, and whenever Saul saw a mighty or brave man, he took him into his service. I mean, that much sounds smart. I guess we're going to try to do 15 here, see what we can pull off. Lord rejects Saul as king, chapter 15. Samuel said to Saul, I am the one the Lord sent to anoint you king over his people, Israel. So listen now to the message from the Lord. This is what the Lord Almighty says: I will punish the Amalekites for what they have done to Israel when they waylaid them as they came up from Egypt. Now go attack the Amalekites and totally destroy all that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children and infants, and cattle and sheep and donkeys and camels. We've already talked about how hard that stuff is to understand. I'm just trying to get through this. I'm gonna be honest, I'm just tired tonight, but I really told myself I would finish 5 chapters. So refer to my Judges reading if you're curious about this stuff, or Joshua. So Saul summoned the men who had mustered them at Tilium, and 200,000 foot soldiers and 10,000 from Judah. Saul went to the city of Amalek and set an ambush in the ravine. Then he said to the Canaanites, go away, leave Amalekites, so that I do not destroy you along with them. For you showed kindness to all the Israelites when they came up out of Egypt. So the Kenites moved away from the Amalekites. Then Saul attacked the Amalekites all the way from Halabi to Shur, near the eastern border of Egypt. He took Agag, king of the Amalekites, alive, and all his people he totally destroyed with the sword. But Saul and the army spared Agag and the best of the sheep, of the cattle, of the fat calves and lambs, everything that was good, and they were unwilling to destroy completely, but everything that was despised and weak they totally destroyed. So they outright disobeyed God's word there. Then the word of the Lord came to Samuel: I regret that I have made Saul king, because he has turned away from me and has not carried out my instructions. Samuel was angry, and he cried out to the Lord all night. He was angry, and and cried out to the Lord all night. Wow. I mean, this is movie worthy here. Early in the morning, Samuel got up and went to meet Saul, but he was told Saul has gone to Mount Carmel. Then he set up the monument in his own honor. Ooh, the shit is getting deeper, pardon my French. And has turned and gone on to Gilgal. That's why I'm called the Frenchman, man. Facts. When Samuel reached him, Saul said, "The Lord bless you. I have carried out the Lord's instructions." But Samuel said, "What then is this bleating of sheep in my ears? What is the lowing of the cattle that I hear?" And Saul answered, "The soldiers brought them from the Amalekites, and they spared the best of the sheep and cattle to sacrifice to the Lord your God. But we totally destroyed the rest, be assured." "Enough," Samuel said to Saul. "Let me tell you what the Lord said to me last night." "Tell me," Saul replied. "Okay, buddy." Samuel said, "Although you were once small in your own eyes, did you not become the head of the tribes of Israel? The Lord anointed your king over Israel, and he sent you a mission, saying, 'Go and completely destroy those wicked people.' The Amalekites waged war against them until you wiped them out. Why did you not obey the Lord? Why did you pounce on the plunder and do evil in the sight of the Lord?" But I did obey the Lord," Saul said. "I went on the mission the Lord had assigned me. I completely destroyed the Amalekites and brought back Agag the king, and the soldiers took sheep and cattle from their plunder." So he wasn't listening at all at the beginning, I guess. Or he's just trying to fib here, who knows. The soldiers took sheep and cattle in order to sacrifice them to the Lord at Gilgal, but Samuel replied, The Lord does not delight in the burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as obeying the Lord. And I think to obey is better than sacrifices in the book of Hebrews. I'm even thinking of a Keith Green song that he actually sings about that very line. To obey is better than sacrifice. There it is. And to heed him is better than the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the sin of divination, and arrogance like the evil of idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has now rejected you as king. So I'm changing my mind about Saul now. This chapter to me makes it clear that Saul wasn't good at listening, and he had kind of become enthralled with himself and with who knows what else. For the rebellion is in the sin of divination, and the arrogance like the evil of adultery. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king. And then Saul said to Samuel, I have sinned. I violated the Lord's command and your instructions. I was afraid of the men. This is his excuse, and so I gave in to them. And maybe that was true, but you should have held your ground, big boy. Now I beg you, forgive my sin and come back with me, so that I may worship the Lord. But Samuel said to him, I will not go back. And now Samuel is being treated like a luck charm, sort of like the ark was treated like a luck charm in Eli's day. Kind of interesting. And as Samuel turned to leave, Saul caught him on the hem of his robe, and it tore. That also struck me. The woman who had a bleeding issue in the New Testament said, if I could only touch the hem of his garment, right? But she didn't grab it like Saul. She just wanted to touch it. It's interesting to think that the action isn't necessarily bad, but trying to force God is probably where God draws the line, right? We can't force God to do anything. but we can have the humility of reaching out, right? As Samuel turned to leave, Saul caught the hold of the hem of his robe, and it tore, and Samuel said to him, "Perfect." I put that in. "The Lord has torn the kingdom of the Lord from you to this day, and have given it to one of your neighbors, to one better than you. He who is the glory of Israel does not lie or change his mind, for he is not a human being that he should change his mind." And I want to say the difference there is that God does sometimes change his mind with actions, but his character doesn't change. And I guess I'm just saying that because even like Moses argued with God about judging and wiping out Israel and convinced God not to destroy Israel. But that was true with his character. What I want to say is God doesn't change his mind in relation to his character. And any theologian, if you want to get in a tussle in the comments, feel free. I might join you, but I doubt that I will. You all can just argue all you want, and it'll be entertaining. And if you make your own channel, if you're super passionate about it, we need more audio Bibles, yo. Saul replied, "I have sinned, but please honor me." So he's worried about his appearance. "Before the elders of my people and before Israel, come back with me, so that I may worship the Lord your God." That makes me think of like how Jesus said, don't pray too long, don't be like the hypocrites who love to pray long prayers, right? That's what Saul wants here. He wants the appearance and kind of that approval. So Samuel went back up with Saul, and Saul worshiped the Lord. Samuel went. Wow. Then Samuel said, "Bring me Agag, the king of the Amalekites." And Agag came to him in chains, and he thought, "Surely the bitterness of death is past." But Samuel said, "As your sword has made women childless, so will your mother be childless among women." And Samuel put Agag to death before the Lord at Gilgal. Wow, what a badass prophet. Oh my gosh, am I a bad person for saying it like that? I might be. But like a prophet who like beheads, I'm pretty sure he beheads him. He just puts him to death, so we don't know how he did it. But he finished the job. Then Samuel left for Ramah, but Saul went up to his home at Gibeah of Saul until the day Samuel died. He did not go to see Saul again, though Samuel mourned for him, and the Lord regretted that he had made Saul king over Israel. Whew. Once again, our longest reading yet, almost an hour long. We just see a lot of mess there, don't we? And Samuel left Ramah, and he basically went up. He was an old man, and he died up there in Ramah. And he didn't go and visit Saul again. That was that. And now I guess Nathan's going to take over as the prophet, but we haven't talked about that yet. That might be in like 2 Kings or something. I'm not sure. But it's fun to travel with you guys. We'll catch you on the next one. 16 through 20 is what we're going to do next. Love you guys. Catch you later.